All right. Well, I am going to share my screen and make sure that you see what I see. All right, so we're good to go. Okay, well, welcome everybody. And I hope wherever you are zooming in from that you are staying warm and you have electricity. And so I heard you say, somebody say, Sandra, I think it was you, about being in Florida. So I have got family members in Florida that if it drops below 40, it's tough. So I tried to feel a sense of compassion for you, for sure. So welcome to this topic. And I got to tell you guys, I've been looking forward to it. Like I mentioned, I'm in Dallas. We've had unprecedented snow and ice here, and we've lost power, having rolling blackouts. And I was like crossing my fingers, lighting candles, saying prayers, whatever I could do to make sure that I was able to be here with you today, because this is my topic. This is my passion, my sweet spot, all of that. And so I love talking about it. So welcome. And so what I hope that you walk away with today is just having a little bit more information around the distinctions, the similarities around team and group coaching. So today's objectives are going to be understand the different methodologies of peer, team, and group. I have come to call them affectionately more than one coaching. Learn what the research says about team and group coaching. I'll share with you a little bit about my research that I did in this area that kind of, again, underscores a little bit of the passion. And then I'm going to introduce you to, hopefully, time permitting, we'll be able to introduce you to two of the models and frameworks that I developed based upon that research. So what is the commercial? I'm not just a hair club president, I'm a client. So I like to basically share that this is kind of in my fabric, in my DNA. As Carrie mentioned, I do have a few degrees, and I actually started my career as a psychologist and worked a lot within behavioral health. And actually specialized in chemical dependency with adolescents and their families. And so a lot of my interest was kind of born out of doing group therapy and seeing the power that group therapy leveraged and had over sometimes one-on-one. And so I basically just took that thought and that experience and did my research around that whenever I was completing my doctorate. So I often start, I think it's very important to lay the groundwork as it relates to why are we talking about this particular topic in 2021, and why is there a lot of interest in it? And so what is more than one coaching, and why is it happening now? And so I often speak on this topic, and in probably the last 5 to 6 years, I've really paid attention to why my clients ask for more than one coaching, and why now. And so I've come up with 5 kind of top reasons why I see in my practice. And so my practice, just quickly, I split my time 3 ways. About 30% of the time I am a professor. I work and teach at SMU Cox School of Business. And about 30% of my time I do organizational consulting, much, I'm sure, like several of you, where soup to nuts, anything, and really kind of falls in the organizational development space around leadership development, management, training, assessments, that type of thing. And about 35% of my time I do executive coaching. And I would say that probably right now, it kind of varies, but right now my practice is primarily kind of C-suite and above. And then the other is more than one coaching. And so, and I will include that throughout kind of our conversation here. And so Carrie is going to, and Carol are going to be watching the chat box. If you have any questions along the way, I get so caught up in this topic sometimes I forget to ask if you have questions. So feel free to be assertive, put it in the chat box, raise your hand on the screen, and I'll make sure to pause and answer any questions that you have, as well as towards the end of our webinar here, I will make sure I give time for Q&A. Okay, so let's get started. The top 5 reasons, and these are not in any particular order, there's just the 5 that I see of why more than one coaching is happening today in 2021. It is a innovative leadership development option. So a lot of you may be coming from the workspace of training, coaching, leadership development. Organizations are looking for new and fresh ways to keep their talent engaged, right? And so it is important that they are always looking for innovation. Team and group coaching answers that mail. It answers around being innovative. It's a way, and I personally, whenever I was internal, so I've worked for a lot of 500 Fortune companies. I've worked for American Airlines. I've worked for large healthcare systems like here in Texas, Texas Health Resources, Baylor Health, as well as Bell Helicopter. And so my corporate experience, I was on the other side of the desk looking for those innovative types of approaches, and more than one coaching kind of answers that. Number 2 is the environment in which we work. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with the term VUCA, which stands for volatile, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So I think we could all relate that this is definitely the space in which we do work, whether we're doing one-on-one coaching, whether we're doing leadership development, or whether we're doing more than one coaching. The environment forces us to think about things differently, how to retain talent, how to recruit talent, how to get our business priorities accomplished in this type of setting. And because when you have more than one in a coaching process, you are leveraging collective wisdom. So any space that you can think of as it relates to this, small groups are usually at the pointy end of the spear as it relates to innovation, as it relates to dealing with problem solving. And so there are some great quotes out there from leaders such as MLK, Gandhi, Martin Mead, that basically talk about the power of small groups. And in an organization, when you're dealing with volatility, where you're trying to figure out how to retain talent because of the COVID situation, how the business models change, leveraging the collective wisdom is where they're at. So team and group coaching fits right in the middle of all of that. The third reason is that it's cost effective. So it's more cost efficient than one-on-one coaching. I got a call 2 weeks ago from an organization, and this is the way it happens a lot for my one-on-one coaching practices, that I'm dealing with leaders who have teams or who have large spans of control, but they don't have the budget for, and they have had individual executive coaching and they've grown. They've benefited from it. And they want to pass that down to their direct reports. And so, but they don't have that budget. Team coaching, group coaching allows that process to still happen at a more cost efficient way for organizations. So that's reason number 3. Number 4 is, look at this picture here, and you guys tell me, what's the common denominator? So take yourself off of mute. What do you see? What's the common denominator here?
That's the youth.
Youth? Okay.
Folks are mostly white.
You know, that is a good point. I should probably change some of my my clip art here. What else?
Communication is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Athletics.
So what is in every picture?
A team.
Small groups of people working together.
Yes.
Coach.
A coach.
Awesome.
Okay. So you think about it. I'm a baby boomer. Whenever I got home from school, I grabbed a snack from the refrigerator and I sat in front of the TV and watched, this is really dating myself, Mayberry RFD. The generations that are now in the workforce that are making decisions are used to being in a situation with a coach. That's how they grew up. My sister has a set of 16-year-old twins, and every weekend, I can remember, every weekend they were going to soccer, they were going to gymnastics, they were going to baseball, they were going to football. They were so involved in extracurricular activity outside of the classroom. That's how they spent their weekends. Well, those individuals have grown up being used to a coach. And so a lot of times organizations, when they're looking at ways of engaging their talent and retaining their talent, that is one of the things that I really try to, these folks are used to being coached. They're used to being on a team. Now, does that mean everybody's on a team or everybody likes it? No. But it does mean that in the workforce today, when I worked at Bell Helicopter, we had all 5 of these generations on campus. It was not uncommon at all. Same thing with American Airlines. It was not uncommon at all for people to be 70, 75 and had worked for the company for 30, 40 years. They're going to be engaged and motivated differently than the post-millennials, Gen Zers that come in fresh out of college or, you know, while they're in college. How are they motivated? How do you want to optimize performance for them? So you have organizations now, which relates to the VOLCA, that are trying to answer the mail, so to speak, on keeping these various generations engaged. But starting really with Generation Y, a little bit of Generation X, depending on the age and their experience, have come into the workforce expecting it. They're expecting feedback. They're expecting positive encouragement. So what and this is number 4, what employees want. They want a coaching style of leadership. I'm working with 3 organizations right now that are large organizations that have been around for years and are trying to shift their culture to a coaching style of leaders. So that's kind of why it makes sense. And so even if you are a one-on-one coach and that's what you enjoy, having a little bit of this knowledge, having that skill set in your tool bag will just help you be more desirable, more skillful, more ready for being able to meet the needs of your client. So they want a coaching style of leadership. They seek feedback. So I mentioned that I teach in a business school. If I've had to really sharpen, because I've taught, you know, in higher education for probably 23 years. And I have noticed even at the academic level, I can't get by with just saying, good job. They crave more because that's how they grew up. And they crave that encouragement along the way. They crave that connection with somebody that is approachable. And so leaders need to be able to influence. Leaders, you didn't hear self-awareness and social awareness terms in the workplace whenever I was out of college and 25 years old in corporate America. You didn't hear that. You basically saluted the flag, you kept your head down, you did what your boss said, and that was enough. The workplace has changed, as you all know. You have to have the ability to inspire and to motivate and to have a varied toolkit. I'm working with 3 senior level vice presidents right now that are extremely successful in their, it's an automotive company that is global. And what they have all said to me individually is that they have to sharpen their toolkit to be able to meet the demands of the leadership today. So that sets the stage. Is there any questions before we move on? We good?
Yeah, we're good. Nothing is in the chat box yet. You're doing great.
All right. So objective number 1, understanding the different methodologies of peer, team, and group coaching. Now, my caveat here is that, and I will address this, is that depending on who you ask, they may have slight differences. So what you will see in this slide deck really is an outburst from my research. I do not indicate that I have conquered the definition of any of these. It's just the methodology and how I define them going forward. This little Venn diagram may look really simple to you, but it probably took me, I would say, a good 7 or 8 years to figure out how to describe it in a way that made sense. And so this, I'm still kind of tweaking this Venn diagram, but here's the takeaway. They all touch. And because there is variations of each in each, it has caused the field to still swim around a lot of muddiness. I am on the National Committee for ICF Team Coaching. They are working on a team coaching credential that I'm sure will be introduced either later this year. And I was one of 2 people from the US that was involved in this committee, and everybody it was global. Sweden, England, Germany, Japan, China, literally all over the world. And so it was fascinating to hear how others defined, specifically in this case, team coaching. And so what I would share with you is that there's some commonalities. But it is, I would say, about 80 to 85% forming concrete, meaning that there's still some variation. So when you look at team coaching, so if you look at team coaching here, team coaching can very easily become peer coaching. And in some cases, you want it to. It strengthens team coaching by increasing the loyalty and commitment. So you will see team coaching having some peer coaching aspects to it. I just finished a 2-year-long leadership development program with a global company where they embedded that. It was their recommendation before I even entered into working with them. They wanted peer coaching as an integral part of their team coaching process. So it was a leadership development program that had a team coaching aspect to it, and embedded within that team coaching, they wanted peer coaching. That was how they were hoping to change the coaching culture, the culture into a more coaching style of leadership. So you're going to see that. And I've had 2 other companies that are playing with the idea of what that looks like for them. B, so when you see the B here, for some, group coaching may have originated in the team coaching experience. So I researched 21 group coaching scenarios, and a certain percentage of them, about 28 to 31%, had started their coaching experience in a team coaching process. And so a lot of times it will be an outburst. So for example, I'm working with a senior vice president now in an automotive company that has group vice presidents geographically located. He's doing team coaching with his direct reports. So he started, literally, this is like how it can morph. He started as in executive coaching with me, entered into a team coaching process, and now he's like, how can I roll this out to my span of control? So it gives you just other opportunities to make an impact in an organization. And so I'm literally watching this right now have a ripple effect. And that's what that takeaway is that you can very easily take, for example, group vice presidents that are not reporting to the same person, but are in different geographical locations, and pull them together they're not on the same team, which I will talk about in a minute, but it lends itself to group coaching. C is quite often, so if we're in C, our touch points are quite often during the course of being in a group coaching experience. Peer coaching is a natural outbirth of group coaching. So there was one group that I researched that, kid you not, was met for 4 years. Yes, you heard me, 4 years. If some of you who have been in the coaching industry for a while, you may have heard of Ginger Cochran. She's passed, but I owe her the fact that I was able to get my dissertation done because I used and worked with her closely. This group was for 4 years, and they were very strong at peer coaching. They were financial advisors and had their own financial services company through Northwest Mutual. And so they were in the $1 Million Roundtable Club, and they happened to be all females, and they had a very strong peer coaching process. So again, you're going to see variations there. So D represents that you have to be able to understand the components of each of these in order to determine the right methodology for the client. And what I see, quite frankly, with coaches, because I'm primarily in the academy where we teach these concepts and the certifications that we offer, most of them are credentialed coaches. And what I find is that the credentialed coach is doing this, and it's very kind of cloudy. Are they doing anything bad? No. Is it harmful? No. But the effectiveness of the coach, you can use a strong correlation with their ability to really make a distinction. And so part of what I encourage all of the folks that I work with is it important that your organization know the right terminology? No. But it is important for you as a practitioner to be very clear on what it is that you are providing and to have skills accordingly. So this is a peer coaching diagram. And again, what I learned probably in the last 3 years is that I guess I made an assumption that everybody kind of knew what peer coaching was. And if you were in an organization, you probably knew what peer coaching was. And what I found is that if you wanted to be effective, and it really took working with Syngenta, this organization I worked with, that really taught me that having a structure around peer coaching will help the effectiveness of it. So I developed a guide around peer coaching, and it's simply helping people get comfortable with it. So in that case, you had scientists, literally they make seeds. If you had scientists that basically said, okay, the company wants me to do peer coaching. Well, I don't know what that, I guess I'm going to talk to Bob during my lunch hour. Well, if you provide information in a structure for that, it increases the effectiveness. And that's really the takeaway from all of these models, is that you need a framework. If you don't have a framework, can you still do it? Absolutely. But it will increase the effectiveness if you do. So in peer coaching, there's mutual trust, there's shared understanding. It helps people understand and get comfortable with feedback. And because I work a lot with leaders, one of the first things that I inquire about and help them understand about coaching is there is a certain element of feedback involved with that. Well, they have usually gotten to the point where they've gotten so high up in the organization, nobody's really giving them feedback anymore, and certainly not on a regular basis. And so I am a big proponent of keeping that muscle working and making sure, because if you get out of the habit of getting feedback, then when you do get it, sometimes it might sting a little bit. So, and as coaches, and it's one thing that I really kind of lean on with the coaches that I work with, is that you have to continue to work that muscle and surround yourself with people who will give you feedback, either in your personal life, in your professional life, or whatever. When was the last time that you asked somebody, hey, can you give me feedback on that? It just helps keep that muscle fit. And so part of the team coaching process is around that. Now, team coaching, and I'm going to go through these relatively quickly. So if you have a question, please let me know. Now, I have worked with some really smart people, smarter than me, and I have been tutelaged under them. And one of them is Peter Hawkins. He has done a lot of work in this area. He's from the UK. Some of you may have heard from him. He did the foreword for my my book on group coaching. I've learned systemic team coaching from him. And he and I have a little bit of differences in regards to team coaching, but it's very complementary. And a lot of it is, it allows for other perspectives. I think I've encouraged him, and he certainly has encouraged me. So the point here is, a team coaching, the client is the leader of the team. So as a coach, I am contracting with the leader first, and then I cascade that down to the team. Peter looks at the whole system and considers the client the whole system. I think there's not a right or wrong. I think it's understanding what's going to work for your client. And so team coaching is an intact team. That if I asked this direct report, who do you report to? Everybody says the same person. And they're very clear on how their relationships with each other. So the distinctions around team coaching, and what I would share with you, and this is not at all meant to be critical, it's just the fact that even in the coaching industry, and I'm just probably in tune to it a little bit, is that coaches, credentialed coaches that are very experienced, very accomplished, will use the words, and I've been guilty of it myself, team and group interchangeably. So that has perpetuated some of the confusion and some of the kind of the fuzziness. And so the distinctions, as I have defined them here, that have come out of my research and my experience, is that membership or the linkage to each other is clear. So if Bob, Sue, and Tom are on the same team, if you ask them who do they report to, they're going to say the same person. What is this team doing? They're going to relatively tell you about the same thing, and they understand their relationship with each other. The focus on the same goal and objective. Now, does that mean that individually, when you're doing team coaching, that Bob can have a different personal goal or career goal than Sally? Yes, but the reason and the purpose, the commission of that team is the same. The reporting structure is clear. They have a shared purpose. And my performance is tied to your performance. So Bob's performance is directly tied to Sally's performance. We have a strong linkage. So when organizations or people come to me and say, you know, I'm not for sure, I'd like to have X, Y, and Z people in a team coaching process, and really what they're describing is group coaching. One of the first ways that I clear that up for the client is to ask them, if I ask the team what their goals or objectives were for the team, would it be the same? So you could take each of these distinctions, turn them into a questionnaire, which is a lot of times how I work. And the client comes to the conclusion, oh, you know what? I think it really is more a group. What's important here is that you're clear. As a practitioner, you owe that to your client to be very clear and to have some guiding criteria. So I worked with a large federal financial company a year and a half ago, pre-COVID. And they saw me doing a workshop at an ATD or ASTD conference. And they came up to me, and it was actually the OD HR business partner came up to me and said, you know, I think we've got some leaders in our organization that really need some group coaching. And I said, well, tell me a little bit about it. He told me about it. I said, well, he said, well, I said, who do they all report to? They said, well, they report to, let's just call her Sue. They all report to Sue, but they don't see themselves as a team. And I said, well, that's maybe a different challenge, but I'll be happy to meet with them. So what I have learned, quite frankly, the hard way, is to don't lead necessarily with saying, oh, that's group or that's team. I just simply go in and I work with the client and ask them, what does this sound like to you? And in this scenario, in my mind, to me, they were a team. The fact that they had some matrix reporting structure was a little complicated. It's federal, right? So it was a little complicated. But they said, you know, we think it's because I shared with them a little bit of the differences. They said, I think we're really kind of a group. Okay. So about the third session in, because I'm moving forward, and I shared with them, I said, you know, I'm not for sure if this particular approach will work, but I'm certainly willing to partner with you along the way. So about the third session, after the third session, one of the people called me, because part of the team coaching and group coaching process, and you will find practitioners differ on this, I offer one-on-one coaching. It's what I call a combination of, I used kind of my hats here to demonstrate. I was really being a consultant. They refer to me as the coach, and I always make that distinction, which, you know, can I put on my consultant hat? And they're like, sure. The client, for the most part, it doesn't care. But I think from an ethical standpoint and for just keeping fit, you want to make sure that if you are responding in the vein of the coach or responding as a consultant. And so she said, I am going to retire in September. And this was April. She goes, I'm going to retire in September and nobody knows. And that is why I've been a little hesitant in the group coaching. Whenever you've asked certain things, we were talking about, I can't remember, and I said, I understand that you want to keep it confidential, but how do you think that might impact our coaching engagement? So we worked about that a little bit, and the more I worked with them, the more muddier it got. So I think it was probably about the fourth session, it was pretty quickly after that, I kind of called it and I said, is this the way we're currently structured working for everybody? because part of both team and group, part of how the coach's role is pretty similar, but it has some distinctions. With a team coach, the role of the coach is to coach kind of the team within a system. With group coaching, it is not. It's different. You're coaching the process and the dynamics. And so again, is it hurting anybody? No. But if you're not real clear, it'll make it more muddy for your clients. And so this situation, what ended up happening, one person ended up getting transferred. And so it happened that they ended up back in individual. But they started, and so that was one situation that I learned from in regards to kind of empowering the client, but also being very, because I knew going into it that I wasn't for sure that it was going to work. So I think you learn along the way in your experience. The individual, and this is where it turned a corner, the individual measurement is tied to the whole. So they were viewed as a department, even though they were very distinct and really saw things differently. That was kind of grist for the mill, as I call it, from a standpoint of what could have been worked on in the coaching process. Contracting happens with the executive sponsor or the team leader first, and then with the team. Now, Peter Hawkins' approach is he approaches everybody at the same entity. I find for me in my particular approach that if the executive sponsor that is involved in it, a lot of times will have different outcomes of what they're looking for than does the team. And that disparity is part of the coaching engagement. So I use that divergent thinking as part of the coaching process. So that's why I get different levels of data. I think both approaches can work depending on your client. The coach's role is to help the team achieve their desired team goals and objectives by coaching them as a whole system. Okay. And so that is an important distinction there. And if you ask the right questions, you'll get the information that you need. So again, the whole system. And in some cases, you're helping to clarify that team's commission and purpose. And so I just included this here because knowing that I am dealing with other practitioners like myself, I see it as a continuum. And this comes from, this is adapted from Peter Hawkins' work. This is from my own experience in research. And because I really struggled to sometimes say, okay, now, is this coaching or am I really kind of facilitating? So part of it is understanding the distinctions there. And part of what we work with in the team coaching certification, and to some extent the group coaching certification, is really kind of fleshing these out so that you as a practitioner are very clear. Oh, you know, I'm really just really doing team building. And so there are team interventions. And I continue to work on with that national team. So that was one of the first things that we did as a group for ICF, is we all had to get on the same page about these various interventions. And so that was a great opportunity for me as a practitioner, after having done team coaching for years, to be in with a group. And it's kind of like you may do yoga yourself in front of your TV, but when you go to Lifetime Fitness and you do yoga, it's going to feel a little differently and it may work a different part of your body. Being on that team national committee really helped me get clearer. It helped me take a little bit of what was being said, There was all kinds of great, knowledge. And I was able then to say, okay, this is what it means to me. And sometimes I've given my clients this one pager. So and especially if you're working with an executive sponsor or an HR business partner, someone in HR or OD or training, you can talk this with them. Because there have been times whenever I entered into a team coaching engagement when really it was a team building process or team consultancy. So again, it's just an opportunity for you to get clear in regards to that space. I find I was looking even at this, the amount of time that I spend on both team and group in the course that I do, is that more people readily get this stuff as it relates to team than they do when you start talking about groups. And so the key points here is, in team consultancy, is you're providing reflections on how the team is performing the task. Coaching combines the performance and the process through reflection and dialogue. Now, is there some variation in some touch points? Absolutely. But by and large, being real sensitive to it and knowing when you slip in and out is important as it relates to my philosophy around the effectiveness of a practitioner. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about group coaching. So group coaching, whenever I first started talking about it, was in 2008. And this was me, or at least it's what it felt like. I would go to OD conferences, I would go to training conferences, and I would talk about it, and coaches would look at me like, what? And I was trying to do my research, and it was very, very frustrating. And so it really forced me, whenever I would go to articulate what it was, to be more crisp and clear. And I found a direct correlation with my ability to be crisp and clear with how many coaching engagements around team and group coaching I received through organizations. So why does the confusion exist? I think you guys could add some of this as well, but we come from various industries. We come from HR, we came from real estate, we come from engineers, and because we have various industries, we have different perspectives. We have different approaches. And from that comes different definitions, various experiences. All of that is, I was talking to one doctoral student actually that's doing their research in team coaching. And I said, that's the beauty and the frustration with the coaching industry, is that we're all in this big pool and we all have different perspectives, and it just takes a little time. I've been involved with the coaching industry for over 20 years. And what I have found is that we are continuing to mature. And that's part of my passion around helping to inform and grow up the coaching industry, to mature. And so it's a privilege to be on the national committee for team coaching. And I'm looking forward to participating in the group coaching whenever they do that. You think about how long ICF's been around. And they're just now in 2020 dealing with team coaching as a credential, potentially.
Hey, Pam, I'm just jumping in real quick, looking at our time. You have about 5 more minutes of content, and then I want to leave about 5 minutes for questions.
Okay, alrighty, thank you. See, I told you guys, I get so caught up in all of this, I kind of forget. So, okay, so let's get to the point around the community and the interest are growing. And so for those of you who are out there that have been coaches or who are thinking about getting your coaching, this is an area that I can speak from experience that is growing, because of some of the things that I mentioned above. So what's participated in, the key is the definition and distinction of these similarities and the differences. So expanded team coaching definition Members are closely linked through reporting structures and deliverables. I think about the organizations that I'm working with right now and how they define and how they've restructured. I'm sure you've worked with some, and you may be even in an organization where you see there's been a change in the organizational structure because of COVID. That's going to continue to happen, but it continues sometimes to make it a little confusing around team or group. Training, facilitation, and coaching, there's blurred lines. And a lot of times I have found, as it relates to group coaching, that organizations are a little hesitant to call it that. And so they call it coaching circles. And when I first started, I would get really I was more of a purist around that. Now they can call it whatever they want. If they want to call it a coaching circle, then that's fine. I just need to be really clear. This diagram right here, again, just goes down a little bit further. And I've spent a lot of time reading and researching around this. And these are the ones that come up that tend to be confusing for a lot of folks as it relates to when you're talking about a coaching engagement. Now, what's important in group coaching that's a little bit different than team coaching is you are going to have more kind of variation as it relates to kind of the facilitation, the training, the mentoring, consulting. It's going to feel a little bit differently in group, a little bit stronger than it does in team because of just the nature of it. So I came up with two methodologies because I would be describing group coaching to my clients or to my coaching students. And invariably, when they started to respond, they were describing coaching in a group. And I don't have a continuum on here, but most coaches who come from a one-on-one coaching process end up doing coaching, what I call coaching in a group versus group coaching. So those are the two distinctions there that I make. So the coachee members, they basically, the coach coaches individual members in the context of a group. The coach is a little bit more involved in the process. And so they tend to be more involved because they're really looking at it from the framework of individual, more so than when you look at group coaching that really looks at it more from a process and group dynamic standpoint. So the coach is coaching at the intersection of Joe and Sue. So I call this is your snorkeling and this is your deep sea diving. And I'll be honest with you, not everybody wants to deep sea dive, and that's okay. But as a coach, you need to be very clear on what it is that you feel comfortable with and what it is that you are doing. Because in group coaching, the group process and the group dynamics are more prevalent and more important for the coach to use a more facilitative approach to the coaching engagement. You are using the group as the vehicle to effect change in the clients. And that takes, quite honestly, a different level of skill than if you're doing coaching in a group. Okay. And so being conscious of time, we just have a few minutes here. I just outlined the right approach can make all the difference. And that's just been my experience around that. We've talked a lot about this. I do want to just highlight, and I can make sure that Carrie gets access to these slides, is that the bottom line is that having a clear understanding of the definitions and the distinctions and understanding your audience and their desired outcome is absolutely, it's a requirement as it relates to team and group coaching. So we don't have time to go through what the research said. I will just tell you that a lot of this is born out of the research that I did. And from the research, I developed, here's a mind map about some of the themes and some of the things that I learned. And I would share with you that what came out of the research was the two frameworks, the two models that I use to do and to train team coaches or group coaches. And so, Carrie, I want to be sensitive to time and leave some time for Q&A.
Oh, this is an excellent presentation. I just want to thank you, Pam, for all of your great research. And it is a gift if you provide your slides. You do not have to. As I said in the chat, often this is original research, and this original research can turn into publication. And so you're getting sometimes a glimpse of more to come. And I really appreciate you sharing your content. It's okay now to take ourselves off live Facebook, and we'll move into the Q&A.